Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold.
Hey, this is Steve Teal with Very Bold Radio and Podcast. I am so blessed today, and you're about to be blessed because we're going to talk to Luke Smallbone of For King and Country. First of all, you're going to be blessed if you get to go to the HEB Center in Cedar Park right there in Austin, December 5th. I love Sunday night concerts. They're the best. For King and Country is coming with their Christmas Little Drummer Boy. It's going to be huge. It is going to be epic. I know epic gets used a lot, but that's just who these guys are. They do an incredible show, entertaining, and so much talent. And the best thing is Jesus is going to show up, and he's going to speak to you. Let's say hey to Luke. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm great, man. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me, man. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate your grace. As I mentioned off air, we tried to talk to you last Friday. We were having problems on our end. Meanwhile, you guys were having some challenges of your own as you had, I believe, were trying to make it to Fargo. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we got caught in some weather. I looked up at my phone that morning, and it said, warning blizzard conditions outside. And so, yeah, we had a truck actually, I think it was two trucks that had their brake lines freeze.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
So that delayed the trucks. Two of the three ended up making it,
wow.
But one of them never showed up. And so we had to kind of change the way we were doing things a little bit, which is always an adventure, but kind of fun and intriguing nonetheless. And so, but we made it. The show went off, and we got through it. We got through it safely, and very grateful for that.
Well, I'm grateful too, and I want to know a little bit more because I went online and I watched, and I don't know if it was your brother Ben or somebody else that videoed and filmed and put together basically like a 5-minute drama documentary, like watching y'all decide, do we postpone the show in Fargo? Do we go with it? How do we deal with missing at least one truck? And so, I mean, it was like this great, captivating 5-minute short film that was pretty spectacular. So I'm curious, one of the insights I want to know is, I believe Joel at one point said something like, well, we'll do this in the round, but I'm not going to tell Luke yet because he hates doing concerts in the round. So tell me about that. What's that about?
Yeah, well, concerts in the round are interesting because you're in the middle. And though you're close to the people, for you to actually perform well, you basically always have to be just going around in circles. So you're going to perform from one direction for a few seconds. You're going to perform to the next. You're going to keep going. And so you're basically always continually moving, and you don't necessarily get to build kind of a really close relationship with sometimes the people, from my perspective. Now, the audience may think differently.
Yeah.
So it's more of just it's a little bit more of a muscle, and it's you kind of have to work it out in a different way, and it just gets a little bit difficult trying to work out the best way to do it because it's a one-off. So you're just going to do that one time, and then you're on to something else. And so that was the challenge with that one. But you know what? I actually really enjoyed it. It was different, but under the circumstance, it was kind of the only option that we actually had. Yeah. And that's kind of what I realized pretty quickly was, I get it. There's not a whole lot else we can do right now, so this makes all the sense in the world.
Now, how hard was it for you or for Joel that you guys truly, I mean, I think you put on the best concert out there. Like your concert events that I've been to are, to me, they're second to none. They're just, I mean, they're amazing. It's obviously a part of just who you guys are that you want to put on this amazing production along with, I mean, you guys have incredible vocal talent. Your songs are amazing, but that production is really strong too. So how hard was it just to say, even for Joel to say, oh man, we're not going to have everything that we planned?
Well, that's always a little bit of the challenge is, whenever something kind of goes awry, you start thinking through what it could have been. And in some cases, you got to change your feeling from not what could have been, but more so that if another perspective is if you don't figure out a way to solve some of these issues, there's people that are flying into town. There's people that are driving hours and hours that plan for a show. And a lot of times they're coming for the music. They're coming for the night. They're coming for the hope of it. They're not coming for, in this case, elevators that we have in the air or, fun little tricks that we have or, streamers that are shooting into the audience, or confetti. Like, those are cherry on top type things.
Yeah.
But that's not the reason why they're coming. And so sometimes you just have to get back to the simplicity of, at the end of the day, people are coming to experience something that not production isn't the thing that is the utmost. It isn't the most important. Obviously, you're trying to display Jesus for people. You're trying to put on, we've all walked through some crazy things over the last year and a half. You're trying to display hope, and that can be done without elevators and streamers and confetti.
Yeah, but the elevator, those cherries on top are pretty awesome too.
They are fun. They are fun. Yeah, when you can have them, we always want them.
Right. Well, talk to me. I feel like you have a unique perspective, and I'm curious about your last year and a half and your perspective, unless you're just tired of talking about that. But I'm curious because I know from your life, man, you have been through it. Like, you've had experiences time and time again. I've got like a timeline in front of me, and I might read it at some point in case people don't realize like all that you've been through starting back in 2012 that I'm aware of. There might have been a lot before then, but I have on my notes like 7-8 things in green notes of what you've been through. So I feel like, and maybe we come back to some of those things. So could you just tell me some of your perspective over the last year and a half or 2 years of what that's looked like for you? Have you grown?
Yeah.
Have you just anything that you have? Unless, like I said, if you're tired of talking about it, I'm okay.
No, it's all good. No, absolutely. Look, I think that, we all walk through things and anything that you walk through, you can learn from, you can benefit from. I mean, Scripture says, God uses all things for his glory, right?
Yes.
And so that also means mistakes. That also means things that may not be ideal. That also means things that even when you were at your worst, God can still figure out ways to redeem and make a little different. And look, for us, our experience was a little bit different in that we live in the country. We live kind of in the middle of nowhere, and for the most part, the lockdowns that were when it was real extreme. Anyway, I mean, you just saw less cars on the road. It wasn't a whole lot different in the sense of what we experienced. But you replace that with someone who's got 4 kids in a 600 square foot flat in New York City. That's a very different scenario, right? And so for us, I feel like I was probably a part of the privileged, demographic where it was a little bit of a reprieve. Yes, we didn't know how we were going to make an income, or we didn't know some of these other things, but we were together. We were in the country. We were able to make some memories as a family that we otherwise wouldn't. And so now that's not the norm. That's not everybody's story. But that was kind of what we walked through.
Right. Talk to me about some of those family memories, if you don't mind, just sharing, what did that look like for you guys?
Well, to put it in perspective, it was my wife and I have been married 11 years, Courtney and I, and that was the longest amount of time consecutively that I'd been home in my entire marriage. So if you just take the stability of Luke's going to be here a month from now, where usually if I've got a month, sometimes they're like, hey, can we zip you out to L.A.? Well, we got some writing sessions, or we got this, promotional opportunity, or we got these. So even when you think sometimes that there's, time, occasionally those things change. And so I think for us, it was just being home. We had a little girl in January, and so just being home for most of the time when we had a child, it was home for at least 2 or 3 weeks, but then you're kind of back at it. So with Evie, I was home for a really extended portion for basically all of her infancy. Like when she was just a really small little girl, I was basically home for it. And you don't get that first 3 months back, that newborn phase, and so to be able to enjoy that and really be there and help in the degree that I had always hoped I could was really thrilling and enjoyable.
Oh man, that is really great. Well, congratulations on Evie. How's she doing? She's about 10 months old, around there?
She is 10 months old. She absolutely is. Yeah, she's 10 months old. She's doing great. She's our sweetest little baby. I mean, she's our first girl, so I don't have a whole lot to compare it to other than rowdy boys, but she's been nothing but a delight so far. And we can afford, like, look, our kids are all sweet. They're all nice kids, but, they're boys. And so the gentleness and the femininity that she brings into our household as far as just being one of the kids is kind of really beautiful and lovely. And we've really, all the kids adore her and love, just they get to dote on her and love on her. It's a really special thing so far.
Yeah, that's great. Well, the boys, I mean, yeah, have they adjusted? Because usually those boys, I mean, like you said, they're rowdy. You were probably pretty rowdy with Joel growing up, I'm assuming, and Ben and the others. So have they been able to adopt that sort of gentle spirit towards Evie?
Yeah. Now, yes. It's probably more my wife's doing than mine in that all of the boys are very gentle. Like, they're rowdy, and they know when to roughhouse because if they're with boys, they roughhouse. But when it comes to their other siblings, they're just very tender-hearted kids. And so you tell them something a little bit sad, they're with you. I told something to my oldest boy the other day, and I saw him just get teary-eyed. And so they've got very tender souls, and so it kind of really works well with Evie, because they're really her. They're her big brothers, but they're going to be the ones that usher in what it looks like for her one day to be looking for a man in her life. I hope that they look to not only, hopefully Dad did an okay job, but also to her brothers saying, well, my brothers treated me like this. That's the type of guy that I expect in my life.
Right. Could you talk just a little bit about fatherhood, and when you talk about being a role model for her to know what she should be looking for, and the brothers as well, but what's it mean to you just to be that dad that the boys also are like, man, I want to be like my dad? How important is that to you?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I think that's the greatest honor and the greatest, if you want to call it, job that you can be given. Because, Mother Teresa said this. She said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
Come on.
At the end of the day, people think that because you have, maybe yourself included, you got a job that's in front of people, you got to communicate, you got to do these things, that's the ultimate. No, this is a part of who I am. This is not who I am. I mean, I'm a husband, and I am a father, and I love I actually cherish the responsibility. I love the fact that I have kids that are watching me. I think sometimes people are like, man, you've always got a kid with you out on the road. What does that feel like? I mean, they're just always there. They're always, Jesus is doing the same thing.
Yeah, there
right?
you go.
So maybe in a very tangible way, I'm always reminded I got these kids here that they're going to walk through things as they get older, as they're boys.
Yeah.
There's accountability there. And so my hope is that they see, look, I hope they get to say that my dad was never perfect.
Right.
But he never told me that he was going to be perfect, but he taught me about the things that mattered. He taught me about the love of Jesus. He taught me how to love one another. He told me how to care for the poor. He told me how to care for people that at times are difficult to love.
Yeah.
He told me what was right and wrong. Those are the things that I enjoy teaching. It's not always a walk in the park, as we all know with being a parent.
Right.
But it's a great responsibility. And at the end of the day, kids are a lot of times a little bit like puzzles. The moment that they're going in the right direction, they're going to surprise you, and all of a sudden kind of go in the opposite direction. And it's up to us to figure out solutions of, okay, I tried that. That didn't work. All right, let's go back to the drawing board and let's figure out another way to teach them X, Y, or Z. And that's kind of, I enjoy that challenge.
Man, that's a great analogy. I love that analogy of the puzzle. Are you pretty good at sort of being adaptable and just going with the flow? Like sometimes, it's amazing. You have 3 boys, is that right?
3 boys and a girl, yeah.
Right.
Kids, yeah.
So, I mean, you have 3 boys, but they probably all have different personalities. I mean, God made them a certain way. Maybe one of them's a little bit more like the other. And so sometimes one thing works for this one, but doesn't work for the other, and the love languages and all that stuff. Have you noticed that sort of thing as well?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think the adaptability for me, I grew up on the road. My dad and my sister are doing music, and so we grew up on the road doing. And so adaptability, literally, if you can't adapt on the road, I mean, you're not going to survive.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that's something that's applicable to parenting, but at the end at the end of the day, most of the parenting is. My mom used to say this. She said, look, I don't really care how you behave when everything's going your way.
Oh.
But tell me how you are, and demonstrate what type of character you have when things are going wrong.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parenting is that. It's like, hey, no, I don't care if you lost. I don't care if you failed the test.
Yeah.
That's part of life. That's going to be there. But what you are in charge of is what you can control when those things do take place. Who are you at the core? And I think, throwing your kids, I'm one of those guys that's like, yeah, I like my kids to be in bed at a certain time. But sometimes it's good for them to be up, you know, when you're doing an event or whatever, and it's late. Like, hey,
right.
You being tired and misbehaving is not a good enough excuse for me. You have to come up with something better than that. Because just because you're tired doesn't mean you can be a miserable kid. Who cares? You got to figure out a way to overcome that. So stuff like that. I think that's great. Hopefully, that you're trying to teach your kids how to overcome things.
Right. Well, let me tell you something. You're teaching us how to overcome things. Again, just alluding to some of the things that you've gone through in the last decade, the entirety of your marriage. You've just been through a lot. And for people that don't know, I just want to touch on it so they don't start like guessing or imagining. I mean, you did nearly die from a life-threatening disease. That was 2012. Your wife, it's documented, and she shares her testimony of in 2014 being pregnant and having so much nausea, dealing with PTSD, anxiety, and becomes addicted to the nausea medicine, which obviously, y'all walked through that. That's pretty serious. January 2018, your 2-month-old son at the time almost dies of sudden infant death syndrome, needs skull reconstruction surgery, 2019 miscarriage. 2021, praise God, Evie's born, but I believe this past May you had vocal cord surgery. I mean, you are the poster child for, hey, guess what, Christian? Life is hard even for Christians, but just what your mom said, what you're like when you go through adversity reveals your character, reveals your faith, really reveals who you are. So I feel like you're the real deal. That's what I feel like, Luke.
Oh, well, you're sweet, man. Well,
no, it's true.
Look, pain is relative, right?
Yeah.
So you look at that, and in the Western world, maybe people go,
okay,
wow, Luke, he's been through a lot, right?
Yeah.
But you go and take a different scenario and say, well, for one, you go to the 1940s in Europe, very different story.
Yeah.
You go through a lot of countries in Africa right now, very, very different story.
Yeah.
So pain is something the pain that I have felt is the most pain that I've ever experienced. But my pain compared to not knowing where food is for the rest of the day, waking up, it's a different, there's a different set of circumstances. But, to maybe just offer a little bit of a different thought, pain and suffering, I think a lot of times is more of a honor than we give it credit. Because when you go through pain and you go through suffering, you get to see the love of Jesus in a unique way. And so for me, I don't desire to go through maybe some of the, because at the end of the day, my life got complicated when I started doing music. It was when all the bad things started happening.
That's interesting.
And so if you were to, if you go through that, it's easy to go and say, well, man, I've done all these things for you, God, and yet this is how I get rewarded. I think I would like to reverse it and say, man, I've got to see my wife pray over my son, who's lifeless in our driveway, come back to life.
Wow.
I got to see, my body go from being just totally distraught and just messed up with a disease to maybe not perfect, but at least healed. I've gotten to see what it looks like to walk through, my child who had done nothing wrong, go through a skull reconstruction surgery, and you take him in there and you give him to the doctors. Yeah. And there's this, I'm giving him up, right?
Yes.
Don't know what the outcome really is. And yet 3 days later, he's looking at me as we're taking him away from the hospital, and he's smiling at me.
Wow.
You go through these things, and you start to see the nature of the Father's love. I mean, that's what everybody said. Like, when you have become a father, you're going to understand things in a different way. But you can intellectualize these things, and you can tell yourself he loves me this much, or you can try and go, I know what it says in Scripture, but when you actually get to live it a little bit and you get to see, wow, look at how things have transpired. Look at how God has used suffering. Look at how God has done certain things. You actually believe it.
Yes.
You don't just intellectualize it. It becomes a part of you. And for me, it's very hard for me to look back and be too upset.
Right.
Because who wouldn't want to go through some of the things that I've gone through when you get to see who Jesus really is and how he really feels about you.
Oh, man, that is good. So you are battle tested, though. Even though I like your perspective and your humility, instead of making your pain and suffering like the world's pain and suffering, I really appreciate the humility that you bring to us and reminder that it is relative. And yet, to be able to talk about pain in that way, and to talk about it and suffering as an honor, is just something I think we need to hear. Is there anything else to add on to that? Just I love how you say it's an honor.
Well, man, maybe I don't have a whole lot else to say. I'm a very normal person who is trying to navigate what it means to, love Jesus.
Yes.
But I think sometimes we remove ourselves the ability to take very, very difficult things and I look at Bible characters, man, and you look at what Paul walked through, and what did he say? Count it all joy when you experience trials of any kind. Well, to be honest, I don't think I understood what that verse meant until I walked through some trials.
Yeah.
And you walk through trials, and you go, man, when I was really, 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 really sick, it was one of the first times. It's the only time I've ever gotten to a point where I go, oh, I see when people get somewhat close to the end that they look at death being a little bit of a relief because you're in so much pain. But then you start going, man, but what if the way that I died could be used for Jesus? What if, by the way, because I used to get super freaked out about going to these doctor's appointments because I always got told bad news. I got told I was getting worse, so I got told.
Yeah.
But then I felt really convicted to go to those appointments and count it all joy. So I would go there, and I would try to chat with these nurses, and we'd have these wonderful conversations. Well, man, if I hadn't had some of these difficult things that I walked through, I would never have been able to have some of the experiences I had with some of these people that looking at me like, why are you like this?
Right.
And man, that's how I mean. Look, I'm not a perfect person, and there were times where they probably saw fear in my eyes, but I kind of got what Paul was saying for the first time in my life.
Yeah, that is strong. That is really strong, man. Okay, well, if you don't mind just giving us a few more minutes, could you do that?
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
I kind of want to just segue a little bit into just thinking about the Christmas story itself, especially since you guys are coming for King and Country, a drummer boy Christmas, and just thinking about how God sent Jesus, and how, to me, if I was God, I would have orchestrated everything nice and smooth and nice and easy, but that's not what God does. I mean, talk about being a father as a job. Joseph gets this job out of the blue, unexpected, to step into this role as a stepfather. You talk about the travels that Mary and Joseph have to take. To me, like, God knew this was the perfect time that Jesus would come, and yet he can't arrange for a hotel room or for a house to be available for Mary and Joseph and the Messiah of the world. To me, everything about it is like, man, Jesus lived that. I mean, he came into that hard world the hard way, just as some of the experiences you have been like. So tell me a little bit about what Christmas means to you, and we're excited that you're coming to Austin, what that is going to translate as we celebrate with you.
Yeah. Well, look, I think Christmas is the hope of the world, right? I mean, you have a bunch of rules and regulations prior. Yeah. And then because of Jesus, you got given grace. And the beautiful thing about grace is and look, if I sound too churchy, then forgive me. But, grace, what is truly remarkable about it is, like, people should just go and go to Webster's and actually look at the definition. Because you start to realize that most of what we do, certainly in the Western world, is we do things based off of, behavior. So if I did this, I deserve to get paid for this. If I was acting this way, then I deserve to be treated with respect. If I did this for you, then you should repay me. Well, grace defeats all of that because it's not based off of our performance. It's not based off of who we are. It's not based off of the things that we've accomplished. It's based off of just that he created you, and you're made in his image, and he adores you, and he loves you. Yeah. And that's what Christmas really, to me, that's what it represents. And the reason why I say it's the hope of the world, because I don't know anybody that doesn't want to be treated with grace. Yeah. I don't know anybody that doesn't want, when one person was mistreated, for the other person to go, hey, man, that's all good. Yeah. That's the greatest thing in the world. When you know you deserve to be treated one way, and somebody goes, man, doesn't bother me. You're forgiven. It's all good. You're sitting there going, but I treated you that way. And they go, don't care. Yeah. You go, well, that is otherworldly.
Yeah.
That's when you start to realize that's not common. C.S. Lewis
Right.
says that heaven must be real because why else would we desire it? That's the truth. We desire grace.
Yeah.
It's just not what we find on earth.
Right. Man, that is really, really good. I see it just kind of all coming together. I mean, you went through adversity, and God used that, and your joy that was tested and became real. And for people to see that, like, it's one thing for them to see you up on stage, and it looks great. 5,000, 10,000 people singing along with you. Looks like the rock and roll, rock star life. But to know, no, this guy's faith is real. This guy's joy is real. And then I could say, even on a small scale, and this is a ridiculous illustration, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway because I can. Just the grace that you showed us in us having some technical problems last week. It would have been real easy for a lot of people just to say, hey, I made time for you once. I'm not going to make time for you again. You're busy. And so I just want to thank you, even though that's a small example, for that grace that you gave to not only make time another time to come on Very Bold Radio, but also to then go long and just bless us with your wisdom and your insights, and you're very thoughtful, and we just really appreciate it, Luke.
Oh, man, you have encouraged my soul today, man. So thank you very much for the prayer before we got on air, but also just for the conversation. And thank you thank you very much for the time, man. It's an honor always to get to chat about these things.
Man, thanks a lot, Luke, and we are just really excited. December 5th, 2021. It's coming up in Austin, the HEB Center in Cedar Park. It's a great venue, and I do love Sunday nights. Like, you go to church that morning, and then we're just going to celebrate and have an amazing time with you guys. And does your Christmas show, last question, does your Christmas show have some of those elevators and things, or is it a little bit more subdued? What should we expect?
This will be the biggest one we've done yet. It'll have the most cherry on top, that's for sure.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Luke. You really are a blessing, and can't wait to see you guys live, and it's going to be awesome. So thank you.
No worries, man. Appreciate the time. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, man. Appreciate
All right.
you.
God bless you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You as well, man.
Thank you. All right, that was Luke Smallbone for King and Country. I didn't even go through. If you don't know For King and Country, you've got to. Their latest, they've won 8 Grammys. That's ridiculous. 8 Grammys, and been nominated for countless more. Artist of the Year, Doves, all the things. They've won a bunch. And God Only Knows, but they've got Burn the Ships, they've got Amen is out right now, Run Wild, Live Free, all these big hits. And then their rendition of the Drummer Boy is really cool. So I am really excited to go to this concert, but it's more than a concert. It's an opportunity to experience the power and love of Jesus. And when we get together as 5,000 people, and we're going to be singing those songs together. And these guys put on a show. I mean, you don't want to miss it. They put on a show. And when we experience it together, we're going to feel the power and that grace that Luke was talking about. And we're going to experience together that joy that Luke was talking about. So I want to see you there. Come up and find me. Steve Teal, Very Bold Radio and Podcast. Thanking Shemaiah and Catherine for helping out today. Really appreciate it. And I want to remind you, as you're listening to the podcast or the radio show or right here on Facebook, just, man, that hope that was tested, that Luke went through and is real, is revealed, proven to be true in his life. His faith is real. I pray that it is revealed in your life to be true, proven genuine, as you've come through something hard, your faith being tested, and yet you come through victorious and still have that joy. That's what I want to see in your life. And that's what the Apostle Paul wrote about. When we come through something like that, even though we know we're going to face it again, more trials are coming. More adversity is coming, but Jesus is using that suffering. He is producing character. He's producing endurance, those things that we need. I want you to know, though, this is the hope that we have, that Jesus is with you. He is in it. He is for you, even when you're suffering. And because of that hope, Paul writes this, 2 Corinthians 3:12, therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold.
Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold.